Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another jewelry making video at keepsakecrafts.net. Today we're going to make this really nice multi-strand bracelet, and the cool thing about this project is it really only uses 3 different jewelry supplies. A little glue and a pair of scissors are the only tools you'll need. So this bracelet design is dependent on having this kind of a clasp. This is a Mini Regal's brass-plated magnetic clasp. I talked about it in my video on magnetic clasps. And it's really intended for gluing pieces of leather into it and then making yourself a bracelet or necklace. But you don't have to glue only leather into it. You can glue whatever you can think of that will work. And so what we're going to use is cord. And I have here a few different types of cord. This is hemp cord and it's dyed in different colors. This is cotton braiding cord, again lots of different colors. You could even use suede. These are narrow suede strips. You could use these. You could use silk cord, really whatever you want. One tricky part I've found was trying to determine just how many strands I wanted to put in there, because I wanted it to be nice and full and not look skimpy. And so what I did, I pulled one of these bundles of my hemp cord off the card and then just kind of experimented stuffing different amounts in there. And so I'm thinking that probably around 30 strands. And then the only other thing you need, besides your clasp and your cord, are some beads. These beads need to have holes large enough for the cord to go through, and they can be whatever you want. I'm going to go with these 2 blue-gray cords, and I thought it was kind of an interesting contrast to have the warm brass and gold colors along with the cool silvers. I think it'll make a nice, elegant bracelet. So once you have your cord chosen, you just need to cut several lengths. And I'm going to cut mine a little longer than I know I'll need. I'm going to cut mine around 8.5 inches long. I want to have enough so that I can trim them off neatly on the other end. So I've gone ahead and cut all my strands. I ended up adding in another 10, so that's 40 cotton strands, but your count will depend on, of course, the clasp that you have and the type of cording you choose. And what I've done is about 1 inch from the end, I've gathered them with a rubber band. And then I'm going to trim them just so that they're all flush and even. So nice sharp scissors that will get you that one, all done in that one clean, smooth cut. And that looks pretty good. Now there are all sorts of choices when it comes to glue, but you definitely want to use something nice and strong, and I love 2-part epoxy for its strength. And you have choices in 2-part epoxies. There's this one that you can get in the craft store, and it sets in 5 minutes, which is lovely. However, sometimes I find I want a little more time. There's this one, and I'll have a link to this at my blog post, that gives you 90 minutes working time, which is maybe a little bit more than I want, but it's kind of a comfort to know that I don't have to rush with this. So I'm going to use this. There's 90 minutes working time, and then it takes 12 hours to cure completely. So you do kind of have to plan ahead if you're going to use this glue. It's not for a last-minute project. I always just dig in my trash for a scrap of paper to mix my glue on. And I do kind of prefer these little tubes rather than the plunger, because it can be tricky to get equal amounts out of those plungers. But the tubes, you just squirt out each one. So you need an equal amount. And there's safety things on these. You may need to work with good ventilation and all that. Make sure you read all that when you're using this kind of glue. And then you want to stir it very thoroughly. So if you're interested in any of the supplies that I use in my videos, you should click on the little tag that's in the upper right, or the link in the description box. Either of those will bring you to my blog post. And at my blog post, I will have more information, often things I thought of or figured out after I made the video. I'll also have a complete supply list and links to products. It's the question you all ask me the most often on my YouTube channel, is where can you get the supplies? So rather than having to wait for me to answer you, you can just go ahead and go to the description box and click on the blog post link that's there. And what I'm going to do now is just apply some of this glue right in the center of this bundle, because that's something one of my viewers mentioned, was being concerned that the pieces would come out of the center. Then that's a good concern to keep in mind. So I don't want to go too far down. I don't want the glue to show on the outside. So just like the inner 1/8 inch or so, get some glue all over those ends. This isn't super deep, so I don't want to put too much in there, but I do want to get glue all around those inner edges and down on the bottom. This is where 5 minutes might not be enough time if you want to do this carefully and neatly. You might find yourself rushing. So I'd rather have to wait longer for it to dry and just be able to take my time doing this. See if I can get that shaped right so I can just stuff it right into that clasp. And see what I mean about wanting not to have to rush. You just kind of want to do it really neatly and get it done nicely on your first try, if possible. And that looks pretty good. All right, now I got a little bit of glop over here. So I'm gonna take this, throw it away. Done with that. Thankfully that's on the underside, and I'm just gonna take a baby wipe and wipe up all that visible glue. So here I am back after about 24 hours, and this is completely dry. And then to smooth these out, because they were kind of kinked, I mentioned using an iron, but you can also use a flat iron for your hair, and it works great and actually uses a little bit less electricity. So that's what I did. I smoothed out all the strands. Now it's just a matter of adding your beads. And you can add as many or as few as you want. I'm going to start with maybe like 6 per strand and see how that looks. And if you need to, you may have to trim your cord a little bit, like at a point. And you can also, if it's really tricky, you can add a little glue to the end of your cord and let it dry. And that will make stringing easier. So I've gone ahead and strung on my beads, and it will vary depending on the size clasp you have, the cord, the size of the beads, just how many you want to add. I realized that having beads on every single one of these strands would be a bit much, so I put 6 beads on about half of the strands. I ended up with 30 on this, and I think that looks good. So now all we need to do is glue the clasp in the other end, but that can be a little tricky. There's a few things I figured out along the way. First of all, you kind of want to shake all those beads down to the other end for now, just to get them out of your way. And then you want to lay that out on a work surface and kind of fan out all of your strands. And this will help you as we're pulling them out so that they're all nice and even and the same length. And actually, I already tested this around my wrist and decided that I want to cut it right at where this very shortest strand was. So don't be afraid to cut your strands quite a bit longer than you think you're going to need, because this is just at the edge of where I want it to be. So I'm going to cut all of mine to this shortest one. So I'm going to kind of pull that one out, get it over here. And then I'm going to take something heavy, or just find some way to clamp down this end, like that. My glue bottle is heavy enough. And then you just start grabbing your strands one at a time, and you just want to be able to tug on it from the other piece of the clasp, and tug on it so that you can make them all the same length. So I'm just doing that and holding it with my fingers. And you just keep doing that until you have all of your strands in a single bundle. Now, it's always my hope to inspire and encourage you with my videos. And if you've benefited, I hope you'll consider becoming a patron. My patrons really enjoy the benefits they get. They get bonus videos, they get templates that I put together for projects, behind the scenes, sneak peeks. So if you are able to, I would love for you to be able to support me on Patreon. You can support this channel with $1 a month or whatever you can afford. And I do have quarterly drawings where I give away my polymer clay and jewelry pieces to my patrons. So check out the Patreon page for details. Find that shortest one right there. Now, when I started this, I had the strands fastened together with a rubber band, but the problem with that, and I lost a bit of the footage, that didn't work out as well as I thought it would. So I'm not going to do that on this end. I'm just going to use my fingers to hold it nice and tight while I prepare it for gluing and put it into the clasp. Because the problem was when I took off the rubber band, it grabbed the cords and then pulled them out of that clasp. So I'm going to grab my scissors and trim. Okay, and I'm just going to hold this nice and tight with my fingers. I've already mixed up some more two-part epoxy here. Another benefit to using the stuff that takes longer. You can do it a little bit ahead. And I'm just going to do the same thing I did on the other end. Kind of make sure I get all the edges on the bottom of this clasp, but not so much that when you push the cords in that it comes oozing out, if you can help it. And then I want to make sure I get all of the ends and the edges. And I'm kind of holding this so that it is in that oval shape that the clasp is. And then pop all those in. Grab a little wet wipe and clean up any ooze. You can use the clean end of your toothpick. There we go. There's a couple that need to be tucked in. It's best to do this clean and neat, like in one motion, and not have to mess with it. And then just like we did the other part, walk away, leave it alone. And after the glue is completely dry, that's it. This is what we have. You can kind of spread those beads around. And if you want, before you clasp it, you can give it a couple twists. And what's cool is that with this kind of a clasp, the twists will stay in place. So again, if you're interested in the supplies I used, click on the little tag in the upper right or the link in the description box to go to my blog post. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Take a peek at my Patreon page for how you can get great rewards and help support these tutorials. Happy creating!